This whole thing, this realization thing, gets bigger than anyone can imagine. The reason I say this is not to be dramatic or to be to make it sound mysterious or anything like that. It's just because it's true. When we go beyond identity, when we start to go beyond the identity structure, when we start to dig into the nature of identity, and it essentially deconstructs, even logically you can see how revolutionary that is. How could you plan for that? How could you even imagine what's beyond that? How could you imagine what it is to go beyond identity itself? It's not possible. The foundation of what you take yourself to be is disrupted. I could say shattered, but it's just the truth. It's the case. And this reflection, this video, is in response to several messages I've gotten recently of just very significant, very surprising, dramatic shifts in experience people are having, anywhere from tremendous amounts of repressed emotion coming to the surface, people realizing they just didn't even have, intense self-doubt or hatred or anger or fear, didn't even know was there, just didn't even realize it, and all of a sudden it's just here. It's coming into consciousness, and it's also very obvious that it was already there. It was just somehow not experienced. It was not acknowledged, not integrated. Anywhere from that to the experience of true formlessness and realization, where the sense of a world just completely disappears. The sense of there being a world at all just disappears. Like, you can't imagine that. It's not imaginable. Even through the thought paradigm, all you could do is conject what that would look like or seem like, but that would look or seem like that to a person or to someone who's separate from it, experiencing it. It's just nothing like that. You can't talk about this in a way that could give someone who hasn't had that realization a true understanding of it, or a true experiential sort of insight about it. You can't. It's just not possible. And yet it happens. It does happen. And it's okay, of course. It's part of the deal. But I sometimes just feel it's important to say that this is just vastly beyond what any of us could imagine. It's just not in the realm of imagination. And at some point, it will really, really surprise you. It just will. It's interesting because on the other side of things, sometimes I get comments from people saying, no, I've never had anything like that. Like, this is really obvious to me. It's always been obvious. This presence has always been really obvious. This truth that's sort of ineffable has always been obvious. And that's great. And it's true. And I believe them. I don't discount what they're saying. Although I will say that the identity structure probably hasn't been challenged yet. Not really. There is an aspect of this that is intuitive, obvious, always the case, simple. You just kind of know, yeah, I've always known this. I've always felt this. This often comes with a first awakening, with an initial shift in identity, where the identity structure is still intact, but you don't quite realize the implications of that. However, what you're taking yourself to be has significantly shifted, has significantly transformed, and the experience of presence, of beingness, of all rightness is rather astounding. It's quite lovely. Usually with that shift, there's not this massive disruption in identity. That tends to come a little later, and it comes in different ways. It comes through shadow processing, like I just described. It comes through deeper realization, non-dual, and then even no self-realization, where the foundation of reality is just completely shattered. How would you talk about that? How could I prepare anyone for that? It's impossible. And yet, this is a totally natural process. It's natural, and it's okay. It's more than okay. It's returning to true nature. It's returning to the unconditioned. Or it's dissolving all the perceptual filters that seem to make reality appear as it's not, appear moving through time, appear solid, appear dualistic, all of that. Those are perceptual filters. So you're not actually returning anywhere. You're not actually going anywhere. You're not actually, period. That's just the truth. But again, those perceptual filters really do seem to create a certain world with a certain set of rules and expectations and beliefs and a feel to it that seems like you, essentially. But as Nisargadatta said, if you regress properly, the I am sense will disappear, which is true. And there's just no way to talk about what that's like. And it sometimes kind of happens all at once, but quite often, that's Kimura shaking her ears. But quite often, it'll happen in sort of phases, I would say. There can be a very significant shift into very clear no self, and then even after that, a sense of some kind of reality to the world, like some kind of a seeming reality, just disappears too. It can also happen sort of the other way around, where there's a very deep and profound realization of formlessness, formless non-duality, and then the identity structure drops away. So it's not always the same, but it is always beyond what you could imagine. It's always bigger than you could have imagined. Surprising. So yeah, why do I say that? Just so that you're not too disturbed when it happens. Also, so that if you feel a sense of having it figured out, this whole spiritual thing, you've kind of got it figured out, and you feel comfortable with it, and you feel like you know who you are, and you know what's what, that there's more, because this is vastly mysterious. and the seeming satisfied self itself will disappear. Like it will, the selfing mechanism will slow down and stop, and that will not be expressed that way. There will be an expression of peace often, that there's this sort of underlying peace, but it's not because of any kind of certainty. It's not because of any kind of self or any kind of intact being or self-assuredness or anything like that. It's just not that sort of thing. It's actually, again, beyond that in clarity, beyond that in ineffability, beyond that in paradoxical nature. It's unconditioned by the mind, unconditioned by expectation, unconditioned by dualistic conditioning. So, yeah, we're all in for a ride.